Show me the crypto. Show me the crypto. Show me the crypto.
In a world on the brink of disruption, two men will bring you clarity by interviewing some of the most intelligent and influential names in the blockchain world. Welcome to Show Me the Crypto with your hosts, Wade Patterson and Ulf Lonergan.
Well, hi there and welcome to Show Me the Crypto. My name is Wade Patterson.
And I'm Ulf Lonergan.
We're a couple of friends from Canada who love learning about cryptocurrencies and blockchain technology, and we're happy you're along for the ride. Whether you're a crypto virgin or you know your way around the block, we hope our interviews with some of the most intelligent and influential people in the blockchain space help deliver you with value. And on this episode, we're joined by Sam Huber, CEO of LandVault. In 2017, long before the Metaverse was on most people's radar, Sam was actively purchasing virtual land. Since then, he has become passionate about helping brands understand and enter the Metaverse. Sam is also a Forbes and VentureBeat contributor, and he is owner of Good Morning Web3. Sam, welcome to Show Me the Crypto.
Thank you, guys. Excited to be here.
Yeah, we're excited to have you on. We were saying before we hit record that we've had various guests on the show, but we haven't really had an episode dedicated to Metaverse, so excited to explore that. But from what I gather, you've been involved with gaming for a good chunk of your career. And I want to start off by asking you, is that something that was a big part of your childhood, or where did this passion for gaming stem from?
Yeah, actually, what's interesting is that I was not what you could call a console gamer or that involved with that. But I've always had a passion for creating. So I started by writing books. I wrote a book when I was 12, which is terrible. But still, I finished a book. I used to draw comics. And then I went into a different career. I studied physics because I'm also very curious. Just wanted to understand how things are working. And then I ended up getting a job in the Formula One industry as an engineer, which was also something that I was passionate about. But when you get those kind of jobs, it's exciting, but it's not that creative. There's 1,000 people in the team. I was very focused on one thing, and so to kind of unleash my creativity, I started to find a different outlet in the evenings, on the weekends. And creating games felt like something pretty cool because you can really create a story and then really help guide people through what you have created. So it's the ultimate engagement medium. So it started from my passion as a creator more than like as a gamer. And I felt I really had a good time building those games and leading that team.
And how did you take all of that and I guess discover crypto? Was it at all related to your career and the things you were doing? Or was this just something that happened out of the blue and another kind of point of interest that you wanted to get involved in?
Yeah, no, the discovery of crypto was just me being curious and hanging out on the internet and, reading the news and reading what's happening. It was very early days after I quit my job in Formula One to dedicate my time to build this indie game studio. And I just remember spending time reading news and, trying to understand the ecosystem. And that was back in 2013. And I read something about Bitcoin. And that's really where it all started. I started, following links on the internet, trying to understand what is the blockchain. I pretty quickly invested in Bitcoin, but it was very much a passive investment. I didn't really, see any utility at the time, and buying on those websites at the time was, it was pretty much like throwing money out of the window, right? The website were not that secure, and it was all actually centralized and everything. So that's how it all started. It started from pure curiosity.
And in terms of what you were doing in the gaming sector, I was watching another interview you were on, and you talked about how one of the focuses was introducing advertising into games in a way that didn't feel like it was advertising. It was less distracting maybe for the gamer. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So when I was building the gaming company, I was very excited to create content, but also very frustrated with the lack of tools that were available to me as a creator to actually monetize my game. That's why I started to learn about the creator economy, what it really takes to make content and monetize it. The only options that we had, we were building small games that were mainly free to play, and the only options that we had to monetize were those terrible ad networks, this very intrusive pop-ups that literally stop the game, and you have to watch a video for another game that you probably don't want, and then you end up spending watching videos more than actually playing the game. So it just felt like a crazy, ecosystem. What that was actually the best tool that was available to us. So I thought, building a tool instead of building content is very different. But about 2 years into the life of our studio, I decided to actually build the solution that I was looking for. And that's what led to AdMix, which is the company that actually acquired LandVault, and we merged together under this new name. And the idea was to create a platform for creators to actually make money without having to create a terrible user experience. So you have a tool that integrates with your game engine, and you can identify areas of your real estate in your game. So it could be like a billboard in a stadium, or maybe the side of a building. And you get to tag that, and you get to sell it to a brand who might want to reach their customers in that game. So it's effectively creating inventory and monetizing that real estate. So very early on, even though this was not the metaverse, it was pretty clear to me that this real estate, even though it's in a virtual world, is still very valuable. And that there was literally no tools that were thinking about how can we monetize all these virtual worlds that are popping up everywhere as gaming becomes more and more important. So that was the first tool that we created. And eventually we built, a complete platform for advertisers to be able to target the right user at the right time in the right game. They can bid against each other. So it's basically a Google AdWords kind of programmatic infrastructure to deliver real-time ads, but all for the 3D world and for gaming. And obviously, now you understand the logical next step, which is to actually apply this technology into the metaverse.
So this whole idea started without sort of the metaverse being attached to it. It was just to use in, your typical gaming. Let's go ahead and just use Grand Theft Auto, how about, as an example, because that's one I think people could, obviously, A, it's really popular. B, it makes sense when you talk about like billboards and things like that. You're in a city, there's going to be lots of opportunity from that standpoint. Did AdMix get picked up and utilized much before, prior to the metaverse and its integration there?
Yeah. I mean, we really launched in around 2018, 2019. And from there, it's been pretty crazy growth. I mean, we have about 600 games, including some of the largest games in the world, Gameloft, Supersonic, which are all big game publishers with millions of users. Over time, it really started to pick up. It's a new tool. Publishers were not really used to it, but they understood that if they could monetize without compromising on the user experience, this was just a huge value add. Because the main problem with advertising is that it's very much a necessary evil. You have to put it to make money, but it's going to contribute to decrease retention. It's going to shorten your session time. It's going to piss off your users. So if you could remove all the negatives and still have the positive, it's kind of a no-brainer. So we evangelized that a lot and grow really fast. We raised about $37 million, along the way from VCs that really believe in the vision. And every year, just bringing more brands onto the platform. And we ended up having hundreds of advertisers from Coca-Cola, McDonald's, Calvin Klein, Facebook Gaming. I mean, all these brands realized that gaming with 2 billion people playing every single day is actually a great media channel. Just that the tools were not there until we built something like that. So that was the big challenge, is getting the brands to understand that they can go beyond Google, Facebook, and their traditional channels and tap into gaming.
So before we get too into, some of these aspects of gaming and the technology, I just want to take a quick step back, because for some of our listeners, perhaps they're not at all familiar with what the metaverse is. Can you just break down at a high level, what is the metaverse?
Yeah, I think we define the metaverse as a digital universe. So it's really the sum of all the games, all the virtual worlds that are built in 3D that exist out there. There's only one metaverse because it's the universe in the digital sense, and it's made of multiple worlds that exist. And those worlds might not be communicating with each other. They don't have to be. And then within that metaverse, so you can see that it would include Fortnite and Roblox, but also Sandbox and Decentraland. But there's a big divide in the middle between centralized worlds, which are owned and operated by Roblox, by Meta, or by Epic Games, for example. These are basically games where the publisher controls the content and also the business model. And then you have the decentralized ones, Web3, which is powered by the blockchain. So we're talking Sandbox, we're talking Decentraland. And in those worlds, the platform is only responsible for building the core technology and a map of the environment. And then they are selling pieces of this map, which is called land. And you can buy that as an investor. And then when you have your own land in that world, you can build on top of the land. You control the content, you control the business model. So it's much more decentralized. There's much more user-generated content and ability for the users to actually invest into that world and monetize and then create amazing experiences. So of course, we focus a lot more at LandVault. We focus entirely on the Web3 metaverse, the decentralized one, because we believe that's where the real opportunity is.
That's such a good definition of it, because even though everyone kind of has a grasp and an understanding, I've really struggled at times when asked that straight up question, what is the metaverse, to explain it. But I think I'm going to steal a lot of the points you just used there, because you did a really good job of it. But I think one thing that's interesting, so hearing you talk about the background, it actually makes a lot of sense that, as I mentioned in the bio, back in 2017, you were purchasing Web3 metaverse land, and that you understood this concept based on the background. But at that time, were you still did you grasp it right away, or did it take a little bit of time to wrap your head around the concept?
It took a bit of time, because at the time, if it's hard to grasp it now in 2017, there were literally no platforms out there. So the story that led to me buying my first piece of land is actually quite funny. I was at a VR conference because AdMix at the time was also targeting VR developers, and we were trying to integrate our technology with VR content to monetize it in a non-intrusive way. And I went to a conference in Prague, which was very niche. I think there were 4 people that attended, but one of them is now the founder of Somnium Space, which I don't know if you know it, but it's consistently one of the top 4 or 5 metaverses out there, millions of dollars in revenue, big, vibrant community, probably one of the most advanced decentralized metaverse in terms of product right now. And so I met Arthur, and he was just getting started. He ended up investing in AdMix. I ended up also, we basically became friends. And then a few months after, he told me about that thing that he was doing, which was pre-selling land, but the game was not even live, nor on the blockchain at all. It was literally saying, if you give me money now, you will get a piece of the game in the future. But there was no blockchain, nothing. So, obviously we were friends. So I was like, okay, let me just buy a few of those. It's $50 per parcel. It sounds interesting. But at the time, I didn't really grasp it. But then, it started to make sense that if you own a piece of, as you said, of GTA, or if you own, a part of the field in FIFA, and you have millions of people playing, of course, this would be valuable, because if you have an audience, you can monetize it in different ways. So, thinking about it, it did start to make sense. And this is where I started to look at other platforms. And then Decentraland was popping up at that time. And then there were a few other platforms as well. And then, from there, that piece of land now is probably worth $20,000. So it's been a crazy ride to see this kind of boom in virtual property value that was mainly driven around speculation, around hype, for sure, because the utility is still pretty nascent. But I think now we're reaching a point where utility is going to become the main driver of value, as opposed to speculation. And this is where you end up having a much more stable market, where you can actually predict how prices are going to move, because it's linked to more tangible things, not just how much people want to pay for it. So that's been a pretty crazy ride, but I'm still convinced that most of the growth, 99% of the growth, is still ahead, because the metaverse is still empty. It's still day zero. So, it's a no-brainer to me that brands and celebrities and people are going to want to pay to be in the best possible spots, just like they're paying now to be ranking on the top of Google, right? Paying to have the right spot in the metaverse is effectively advertising. It's promoting yourself to be in the best, most discoverable area. So, there's a lot of analogies that can be drawn with the internet, which is exciting.
You mentioned utility there. I'm wondering if you can provide some specific examples, like what types of utility could you get from owning certain pieces of metaverse land?
Well, the utility is really about how you want to make money from it. So that's the business model is actually ingrained within Web3. It's the blockchain is there, right? So you can sell NFTs, or you can run a token, or you're free to build any business models on top of that land. So for me, that's the real utility. We're trying to go beyond the hype and actually provide tangible value. And if a brand or someone is able to build something on that land, could be a museum, or they could be streaming their own videos, or they could be running Q&As with influencers. If people attend and are actually coming to that land, then you can figure out a way to make money. It's just like attracting visitors to your website. So that's the real utility. It's definitely powered by the fact that more people will come. Once you have an audience, then you can use what the rails that Web3 gives you to actually make money from that. And the best one that we found so far, which is what the company does today, is by getting brands to actually pay for an activation. So if you own land, you can connect it to our land, and then we bring that to market to our brands. And if a brand wants to do a big activation and you happen to be one of the land underneath, then you get some revenue from that. So yeah, that's the current model.
The metaverse, as far as a term goes, has been around for a while. I believe it was first mentioned in the book Snow Crash. At least that's what I've heard. I haven't read the book. It's on my list to read. But my question around the metaverse, as far as a term and what it is, does it? So it gained a lot of popularity in recent history, and I'm curious: is that related to virtual reality? Is that related to the moves Facebook has made, or is that related to decentralized metaverse and blockchain technology? Where does this all come in, or is it everything kind of converging together?
I think it's everything converging together. I would distinguish the metaverse, which is the actual world, with VR, virtual reality, which is just a device that you can use to consume the metaverse. But just like you can consume the internet on different devices, even your TV or your mobile, you'll also be able to consume the metaverse in VR, but also on your desktop and on your mobile. So VR is just a window onto the metaverse. It's kind of separate. I think the real driver has been gaming. Gaming has been, obviously it's a massive industry. 2 billion people play every day. $160 billion in consumer spend on games, which is by far the biggest entertainment channel. But it's still very much under the radar for a lot of brands, for example. And I think the metaverse, to me, is really that moment in time where gaming becomes mainstream, because it's not just about the games anymore. It's about using the gaming technologies, real-time 3D, Unity, Unreal, but to do other things, which could be a social network, or it could be buying products, right? You can use the technology to create other use cases that are not just pure games. It's pretty clear that people love to spend time in games. They love to spend money. As long as the game is exciting and engaging, you can draw an audience. So to me, the metaverse, the use case for the metaverse has been proven by gaming. And I think the fact that it's now decentralized, so you're not just a player in the game, you're also an investor. If the platform does well, you make a lot of money. You can monetize your own land. It becomes this 3D version of the internet where you can actually run your own business within the metaverse, which I think is very appealing to people. That new creator economy that you're able to generate revenue from the tools that you're given is just very exciting. So it's all these trends converging into that moment where the gaming technologies that have been proven for 20 years are finally getting into the mainstream area.
I'm hoping we can dive into some of the specific ones. So you've mentioned Decentraland, you've mentioned Sandbox. There's other things like Other Side. Can you jump into some of those main ones and maybe just kind of, there's a couple things I'm wondering. First off, what makes each of those different, and maybe just a bit of a description of each. But then also, how does one know one of those metaverses is going to be a metaverse that matters, or a walled area that matters in the greater metaverse?
Yeah, I think it's the same question back in the early 2000s about which social network is going to be the dominant social network, right? So right now we have probably the equivalent of a MySpace, which is Sandbox. Sandbox is by far the market leader right now. They probably wouldn't like me to talk to them about being MySpace, but it's a local maximum right now. They're by far the market leader, billions of dollars in land in terms of market cap, huge amount of sales, a lot of great marketing and everything. And then you have like Decentraland, you have like then second tier, which are a little bit less hype, but also great products. And those platforms, the leading ones, have raised a lot of money, so we know they're going to be around for a while. But it's true that we don't know if they're going to be the metaverse in 10 years. And if you look at history on other, innovation like social media, probably not. They probably won't be the leader in 5, 10, or 15 years. So I think there's going to be new platforms. The dynamics are pretty similar to social media, where network effects are really important. So if you start having enough brands that attract enough users, and more users attract more brands, it's really difficult for others to compete. The network effects are pretty strong. And gaming also show that if you have a game that is constantly evolving, like Fortnite, that audience is there. They're staying there. They're really hard to move. I could create a copycat of Fortnite, right? Building a game is, many companies can do that, but it's Fortnite that has the audience. And I think it's the same in the metaverse. You can always think someone else could create a better platform. I could create a better social network, but the audience is there. If all your friends are there, if the brands that you care about are there, it's going to be really difficult to, move away from those platforms. So that's what the platforms are doing now. They're really focusing on trying to build those network effects as quickly as possible to become this kind of indispensable, metaverse layer. But my guess is that there will be probably, 2 or 3 really mainstream dominant platforms, a bit like we have Facebook and Instagram and TikTok. And then you have more niche metaverse that maybe appeal to only music fans or sports fans that would just not be as big, but would be more targeted. I think the profile is going to be very similar to what we've seen on social media.
Ulf, do you realize our audience has been either watching or listening to this episode for 20 minutes?
20 minutes? No, they should probably subscribe.
Yeah, they should subscribe. And if you're watching on YouTube, make sure you comment and turn on notifications. And if you're listening to this podcast, especially if you're on Apple Podcasts, leave us a rating and a review.
We're also on Twitter, Instagram, and even TikTok. So go check out the episode description. You can find all that information below. And we have an update on the NFT, don't we?
That's right. We didn't previously mention this, but this NFT for OG supporter is a one of one. There will only be one of this kind ever minted, and we have a few surprises for the person who purchases it. The link is in the episode description.
And back to the episode.
So we're currently in a bear market. Crypto prices are down. NFT prices are down. What's your take on prices for land in the metaverse and how those have held up in the current market?
Well, they haven't really held up. It's been, they've been going down like everything else, mainly because they are pegged to Ethereum or another blockchain, and that has gone down. The floor itself in crypto value is probably 25% down, I would say. But it's really the value of Ethereum or the underlying blockchain that is putting the price down. So yeah, I mean, there were pieces of land that were $50,000 that are probably worth 10 or 15 right now. And it's slowly getting back up. The fact that there is utility tied to it and it's not just a profile picture does mean that there's potential beyond the hype. But I think that it's the prices certainly have been going down. But if you're excited about the metaverse, like I am, and if you were already excited about buying land and building your HQ in the metaverse, building your business there when the price were crazy high, then you should be triple excited now that it's actually affordable. So that's kind of the frame of mind that we have. Obviously, I own a lot of land personally, but we're also buying, right? We're now buying land to be able to build for clients. So, it's kind of the glass half full or glass half empty. On the buying side, it's very exciting. And then I just forget about the rest because I think this is short term. This was speculation that went to crazy high. The intrinsic value was not that high. So now we're correcting a little bit. That happens all the time. And now that utility is going to take over from speculation, at least that's the idea. As more and more people come in, you can do more with your land, right? And that's where we're actually going to drive a lot of value. So to me, that hasn't really changed the thesis, the long-term view of the metaverse. And so, yeah, I'm equally as bullish, if not more than I was before.
On that note, in regards to, going out and purchasing land. So if you're new to the metaverse and you're looking for where you might want to go purchase your first decentralized metaverse pieces of land, then do you have any recommendations as to where someone should start looking? And with the timing, being what it is this is there a risk in the metaverse being potentially open-ended? Like, is there actual walls, or can there always be more land? And is that sort of an additional risk someone takes on?
So the first question, the land is an NFT, right? Each piece of land is actually an NFT. So the best way to get started and go and buy it is to go to OpenSea, or you can go to other platforms, OpenSea being the main one. And you can just search for Sandbox, for Decentraland, and all their land would be listed there. Now, the analytics that this platform gives you are very limited. And, searching through 10 different profile pictures is easy, but when you have 150,000 pieces of land, where do you go first, right? So the tools are not great. At LandVault, part of what we do is building tools to accelerate the metaverse economy. And so we are building discovery tools. We're helping people, search for more criteria on your land based on the things that you're interested in. Who are the neighbors? What are the prices? How has the prices been evolving over time? All of this stuff you can't do easily on OpenSea. So there's a few companies, and us being the biggest builder, we're the main one, actually building the tools to help you discover the metaverse and make the right investment decisions if you're willing to buy land. So there's a lot more coming there. And then on the second question, so that's an interesting debate about the value of land. So the way that I see it, creating more land is, I was kind of alluding to that a little bit earlier, right? You could create a copy of Facebook tomorrow. Like, it's not that difficult to build the social network website. Or you could create more websites. Every day there's about 500,000 new websites that are popping up. Those that don't make the leading website like Google and Facebook or Yahoo less valuable, right? Because it's not about how many websites are out there on the internet. It's about where the audience is. And it's the same for land. You could create more land. I could create a metaverse with 1 billion pieces of land. Is that going to make the land on Sandbox less valuable? No, because the audience is there. So creating more land in itself is not going to affect the value of the land that already exists. Just like creating a new website on the internet does not affect the others, because it's about the audience. And the audience is finite. The audience is going to be attracted to the best experiences, which take time to build, which take, experienced builders to create. And those are finite. There's not going to be an infinite amount of great experiences. So that argument that, because it's virtual, we could create more of it and therefore it has no value. The internet has proven that this is not the case, right? The internet is virtual. The metaverse is just a 3D representation of the internet, and every piece of land is kind of like a unique .com domain that, some of them are more valuable than others based on how popular they are. You can create more. It doesn't mean that the main ones are going to be less popular.
What piece of virtual land that you own is your crown jewel, like the one that you're most stoked on in your portfolio?
So the thing about land is when it's not built, they're all kind of the same. There's obviously different locations, but most of the platforms, the land is as a square of, in the sandbox is 96 meters by 96 meters. In Decentraland is 16 by 16. So they make it bigger or smaller, but it's just a square. So it's not like it would be, an exciting design or anything like that. So unless you build something on it, it's all roughly the same. As LandVault, we have a really big piece of real estate that is probably in the best location in the sandbox because it touches the area where everyone spawns first when they're loading, which is called Hub 1. You can go on the map and you can see there's a 6x6 that is branded as LandVault. So that's great because everyone that loads literally is a meter away from accessing our experiences. And that's an interesting dynamic. Like distance doesn't matter in the metaverse because you can go from A to B without walking. You can click. So it doesn't matter if you're far. But proximity to other big projects does matter. It's not a tangible thing, but that's how people value it. I always use the example that the most expensive piece of land in Sandbox right now, if you reduce it to a 1x1, it's next to Snoop Dogg's estate. So Snoop Dogg has created that great experience. Everyone wants to be Snoop's neighbor because it's cool. You can brag about it and, you can probably charge more if you want to rent it. So those dynamics of, social status and I want to be part of a cool neighborhood kind of thing, they also translate into the virtual world. And so having that prime piece of land for us enables us to get big brands, luxury brands who just are happy to pay a premium. In fact, they are looking for the most expensive street. They want to be on 5th Street. They want to be in Harrods in the UK, which is the rent is horrendous, but they need to be there because everyone else is there. And that's just a status thing. So all of those mechanics also translate to the virtual world, which is quite funny to see.
We've talked a lot about sort of acquiring land and what that process looks like and some of the utility from a business standpoint. But if we just focus on metaverse gaming and why people would first even go visit these virtual worlds, where is metaverse gaming today? What does it look like for those who haven't participated? And where is it going to go in the future? And can it sort of hold up against, AAA game studios who maybe aren't in the metaverse world, but they're just creating really awesome games that everyone wants to play?
I think a really awesome games is the baseline that will be needed if we want to have long-term engagement in these metaverses. The pump and dump, the fact that you can make money and the price is going up, like it's exciting for a while, but then it always eventually corrects itself. So that's not a long-term driver of audience and value. It's a very extrinsic motivation. Like people are just here for the money, but then there's no money, no one's interested. So you need something to create intrinsic motivation for the players, which is the enjoyment of actually participating in an exciting quest or an exciting game, or playing a soccer game and beating the other team. Like these are real motivations that people have that would consistently drive them to engage with that activity. So I think we need exciting games for sure. And, LandVault being the biggest builders now in the sandbox and Decentraland and others, it's also our responsibility to build cool things because it's directly going to impact how many people are going to enter the space. So we feel a big responsibility to build the metaverse we want to see. And that's really the baseline. But I think what's exciting is now if you have exciting game in Web 2, traditional games, and an exciting game in the metaverse, then in the metaverse, the decentralized one, you have that whole economic layer that is created by Web 3. So you have land. So you have landowners that can make money from it. And then if you have enough land, maybe you need a real estate agent to manage it for you. So that creates another type of job. And then, you can bring your own business models. You can create advertising. So there's a lot more creative freedom for people to actually contribute. It's not just creating by one party. And I think this is that economy that creates itself because of Web3 in the metaverse. That is the most exciting, and that will create just more than just a game. It will really create an economy. So you start to have different stakeholders that need to work together to make money together. It's like the real world. It just is translated into the metaverse. And we're starting to see that already. I mean, I'm a landlord. I'm renting my land. So technically I'm a virtual landlord. Creators are, they maybe not able to afford that land anymore. So they want to build on top of it. So give me something for me to give them the land. So that's, I think, what's exciting. That just isn't really there in gaming, at least not at this scale, is the whole economic opportunities that the Web3 is creating in the metaverse.
According to some of our research, talking about lending out some of that land, I came across a stat that you're making something like $60,000 per month lending it out to brands. First off, is that number accurate? And second, is that like, how does somebody go about that? Do you have to be in the mix of it and in the industry and everything like that? Or could an average person somehow make these types of connections, in your opinion?
Yeah, that figure was probably on the Fast Company article. This was actually just one project where there's a huge piece of land that we acquired for a client. I think it was over $1.5 million. And that's the monthly rent that they have to pay because they didn't buy the land. They're just renting it from us. So, we took the risk on buying the land with the landowner, and now we're renting it. So that's just one of the projects. And yeah, so, land rental is a big part of our business model, which is also something that we didn't really expect. We initially thought, let's just build and then use our technology on top. But the first step is, okay, we don't have land. And for brands to buy the right token to buy the land, and then it's an NFT, so it's not a fixed price. It's going to vary. If you bought land 2 months ago and you're a big brand that you have to convince your CFO to buy land, and now it's worth 20% of the price, you're in a tough spot. So a lot of brands or agencies do not want to take the risk. So we're happy to take the risk because we understand the space. I think right now it's very difficult for, I talk to a lot of landowners, obviously, and they don't know what to do with the land. They don't know where to find the creators. And then the creators talk to other creators, but they don't know where to find the land. And then the brands are completely out of the space. They don't even know what's possible. So these are all the different stakeholders of that metaverse economy that, again, at LandVault, we are building marketplaces and bridges and tools to bring them together. Because if the brands start to find the right creators and the creators know where to find land, then suddenly you have an economy because those guys are starting to talk to each other. So right now, it's very difficult for anyone to approach a brand, and there's no marketplace for that. But these are the tools that we're building, and we're hoping that within the next year or so, there will be an actual market. So if you have land, you can connect your wallet to our platform. The land is kind of put in that huge pool. And then when our team goes to market to talk to brands, your land will be part of the mix. And if the experience happened to be hosted there, you get a cut on the revenue. And that's how we slowly decentralize what we're doing by also using other people's land, other people's creative skills to really create a huge economy in the metaverse.
Now, we've probably touched on a number of challenges already. Maybe we were kind of just talking about challenges that the metaverse still has, or maybe users are dealing with when interacting with the metaverse. But if there are any that you can think of on the spot right now, what are some of the main challenges facing, whether it's users or developers or, maybe it's people like yourself who are purchasing and trying to rent out their land? What are the main challenges facing the metaverse as a whole right now?
It's certainly the technology to have, concurrency, basically, to have more people evolving in the same experience at the same time. Right now, some platforms are limited to, a couple hundred live users in the same instance. And that's limiting, right? That's limiting, and it can be slow and it can be a little bit clunky. When you talk to brands, generally, they don't really know what's possible in the space. And when they do, and you start to pitch them the future of the metaverse, then they go back with a brief of creating a concert for 10 million people in the same space. And the technology just cannot handle that, not anywhere near. So I think that's the main challenge, is we need the technology to catch up with the promise of what the metaverse actually can be, so that, brands and people actually enjoy using the experience. And I think that's possible because, again, all of that is very much led by gaming technologies. There's some really advanced gaming publishers and studios out there that we can borrow learnings and things from to be able to bring that on chain. And I think more and more we're going to see that not everything needs to be on chain because it's slow. So you don't need every single avatar, every single asset to actually be an NFT. It could be a representation of it, but it doesn't need to be constantly, on chain. So I think it's an MVP right now, what we're seeing. There's a lot of challenges from a tech standpoint to really make it exciting and enabling others to build on top of.
One of the reasons Ulf and I started this podcast is because we obviously love chatting about crypto and blockchain tech, but we find amongst our friend group, there's a small select few that will engage in those conversations, and other people, maybe it's over their head or they're just disinterested or that type of thing. I'm curious for yourself, outside of the industry and the conversations you're having, someone like you who is a massive purchaser of virtual land, in real life, those conversations with friends, family, do they understand it, or are those some tough conversations?
I think actually the land and the metaverse is somehow more tangible than purely NFTs, because in your mind you can bring it back to like, this is real estate. I'm buying a house in this neighborhood. It's popular. You could even talk about what I do, and if you don't mention that it's digital or physical, like you wouldn't know. It's the same vocabulary almost, right? We're buying land, we're building on top of it. So if someone came in and I wasn't mentioning that it was in the digital world, they wouldn't know any different. So I think that's what the metaverse is good for. It's actually quite tangible for users. And when we sell it to brands, brands have been approaching Web3 from NFTs for the whole of 2021. And now the metaverse is kind of the next thing, the next buzzword. And I feel like this is a much easier on-ramp for them. Because NFT, go and explain an NFT without talking about an NFT. Like there's no analogy that you can create. I mean, it's digital ownership, but this is not a concept that most people are familiar with. But the metaverse, you can talk about it as this is a replica of the physical world in the digital world. You can buy parts of the map, and this is valuable because the audience is there. So I think that is actually a lot easier to explain to people that are not in the space than why, a PFP or layer 2 or a token is valuable.
Now, switching gears a bit, you're also the owner of Good Morning Web3. Can you explain for those who aren't familiar, what exactly is that?
Yeah, Good Morning Web3 is like our educational kind of initiative around educating people and brands and IP about Web3. So we basically have a website where we publish articles. It's turning into a newsletter. So we share a bit about what we do at LandVault, but it's a lot more community driven, and it's not promotional. It's all about education. And a big part of that is also our events, Good Morning Web3 Live, which are run by two people that are working with us now, John Kraske and Charles Atkins, who are respectively our business development, head of business development and running marketing for us. And they have a huge community of people on LinkedIn that just want to learn more and just like to be among, like-minded people and learn more about how to get into Web3. So when we brought those guys on board, they kind of spearheaded that website, that newsletter, and this group. And this is really all about helping more people enter the space. So we've done events really across the world, from London to Miami to Austin. We're doing Dubai in October, just connecting the best of the best Web3 communities together and building our network.
Awesome. Well, Sam, you've done such a good job explaining all things metaverse. I think that this episode is going to be a great resource. I'm sure we'll point people toward it if they have any metaverse questions, because you've covered so much ground. We like to end every episode of Show Me the Crypto with the same 3 questions we ask every single guest. It's a segment we call You Had Me at Crypto. Ulf is going to ask you those questions.
All right, Sam, you ready?
Let's go.
All right. So the first question here, who is your favorite person to follow in the crypto space?
Oh, wow. That's probably Vitalik. I know it's nothing, extraordinary, but I think his insights, and it feels like that guy's like 10 years ahead. So I really like to follow what he says.
Yeah, he might be the most
common answer, I think.
Sure.
I'm sure.
For good reason.
Sorry.
But not like by far. Like, I feel like out of our 70 some episodes, 5 people have mentioned him.
Yeah,
but like there's a big vast array, but you're in the mix, the majority. Yeah.
All right. Second question.
I'll try to stand out on the second question.
Yeah. All right. What will the price of Bitcoin be 10 years from now?
I would say over $100,000. Obviously, I'm bullish. I think it's not crazy to expect that. And I bought at 190 in 2013, so I'm still hoping to make my 1000x eventually.
Nice. When you buy at 190, something like 100,000 is massive. But we talked to a lot of people who maybe bought at 10,000, 20,000. Maybe they're down right now. Great. So they're still shooting for $1 million or something like that.
Yeah. Well, there's plenty of stories as well. Like I lost a lot of them in the Mongox exchange crash. It's not a straight line from 190 to 100,000. So don't feel too bad.
Fair. All right. Third question. What is the most underrated coin or project in all of crypto?
Good question. Well, we have a token coming out, which no one knows about, so it's very underrated because it's probably one of the first time where I'm mentioning it. It's next year, but yeah, I'm just shilling my own project right now.
No shilling your own project, so let's pick a new one. We actually tell that to everyone, but we forgot to slide it in there.
Right. I think there's a bunch of tools out there that are aimed at the metaverse. Whitley is one. They're building tools for real estate investors to really understand the metaverse. I'm an advisor there as well. Technically not my coin, but yeah. So there's a bunch of exciting projects.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Sam, for joining Ulf and I on this episode of Show Me the Crypto.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you for listening to Show Me the Crypto. Please make sure to subscribe as well as rate and review this podcast.